So, have you gotten an opportunity yet to see the Andre the Giant biography that was on HBO not too long ago, less than a week ago? I believe it was either the Saturday it came out or Sunday right after WrestleMania, or maybe even Monday after Raw. One of the three. It came out. I got a chance to watch it. It's about an hour and a half long, and some controversies surrounding this biography by a lot of fans who felt that there was a part of the biography that had a huge focus on Hulk Hogan, and it was during a period where they were talking about WrestleMania 3, and they were talking about how Hulk Hogan was rising in popularity. They show Hulk Hogan winning the title for the first time. They talk about how his part in Rocky 3, where he played Thunder Lips, and they kind of followed his arc a little bit going up to WrestleMania 3. And the director of the biography sort of said that they were telling two stories there. They were telling the A story, which was obviously was Andre, and about his arc, and then there was telling a B story, which the B story was sort of the rise of the WWE at the same time. And there was one part in there where they talk about how, or somebody makes a mention of the fact that Andre represented the old school ways of doing things, and Hogan represented this new wave of doing things. And the old school way was that Andre traveled around to all these different territories where he was an attraction, and every time he would show up to a territory, he would be there would be sellouts everywhere. People would be oohing and ahhing him, and it was a very much a carnival-like atmosphere. And then Hulk Hogan comes in, and now there's a shift where there's a national presence by one single company, and the passing of the torch, as it were, from Andre the Giant, the representative of the Carney way, the old school way of doing things, the separate territories, the traveling from Canada to Ohio to Japan, back to California, down to Florida, that kind of way of living as a wrestler. And Hulk Hogan, who, yeah, obviously doing all the traveling and stuff, but he's only doing it for one guy, the monopolization, and how the monopolization of the wrestling industry sort of overtook the Carney way with the symbolic defeat of Andre the Giant, who was the symbol, the biggest star of that time, of that way of wrestling. Hulk Hogan, the new star of wrestling, taking over that. And they did take about I don't know how long it was, maybe 4 or 5 minutes of the documentary to talk about Hogan. Hogan appeared in it a lot, and they showed a lot of pictures even towards the end of Hogan and Andre together. So there was a big focus on Hogan in this documentary, and needless to say, Andre the Giant did a lot of things without Hulk Hogan. They showed him, even in this documentary, wrestling people like Harley Race. Ric Flair had some thoughts about him. They had Pat Patterson in it. They had who else was in it? They had Jerry Lawler in it. Obviously, there was this one very very interesting part where Vince McMahon, he says, I try to eliminate all negative things from my life. And he's talking about, at the time they were asking him about the death of Andre the Giant, and you could see sort of his eyes welling up a little bit over it. Tim White was really, really good in this. I mean, not really, really good, like he was acting, but just to see his perspective of things and how close he was to Andre. I understand that there was a lot of talk of Hogan. Hogan had a big part of this, but in most fans' eyes, that WrestleMania 3 match was synonymous with what they knew of Andre the Giant. A lot of people don't even really remember that Andre the Giant wrestled even after that. Andre the Giant, I believe, won the title after that. Andre the Giant showed up in WCW after that. That was never mentioned at all. He showed up maybe one time in WCW, and that was during the period where him and Vince McMahon weren't getting along, shortly before his unfortunate passing. So when you look at the totality of his career, they did give an ample amount of time to the beginning portions of his career. They talked about The Princess Bride. They even had interviews there with Robin Wright, with Carrie, I forget how to say his last name, but Carrie Ewells. Billy Crystal was in it. Rob Reiner, the director of the movie, was in it. So there was a focus on the totality of Andre's life. When they were talking about that specific time when he was going to WrestleMania 3, there was a sort of building of Hogan in that. And I feel like the director was doing that not just to tell the B story, but also to build up the importance of what WrestleMania 3 was to the business as a whole, and therefore how important it was to Andre. Because if you really look at what happened after that, the business sort of left Andre behind. And that was after that portion in WrestleMania 3, that was where the focus was going, how Andre sort of was left by the wayside. And Vince McMahon talks about after WrestleMania 3, after his career started winding down, how the relationship between him and Andre the Giant changed, where it was a loving, respectful relationship before. He said Andre felt like he was being, like Vince McMahon was to blame for the downfall of his career after that. Which, true or not true, who knows? Andre can't, say that that's the reason. Maybe, Vince was screwing him out of money. Who knows? Andre's not here to defend himself or to back up the comments that Vince McMahon was saying. That's how Vince McMahon viewed it at the time, and maybe still views it to this day, or maybe he's just lying. But the thing is, the idea that there was there was too much focus on Hogan. I watched it, and I do remember in my head thinking to myself, like, wow, why are they showing so much of Hogan? But after watching it to its totality, I kind of saw what they were trying to do. Did they go overzealous on Hogan? That's the debate right now. Me personally, watching it from beginning to end, I think, it was a Hogan heavy thing, but Hogan was such a big part of that piece there. I remember that the part where they're talking about how Andre was just kind of fucking with him, and just wasn't telling him that he was didn't know the finish. And if you look at this letter that Hogan wrote, it was a reading. It was a match. Like he ran down the whole match. Okay, this is what's gonna happen then. And this is gonna happen then. And da da da. But if you look at the very, very top, it says, "Please don't show Andre this." So he's writing this whole thing. I think he gives it to Vince or Pat, one of the two. And on the very, very top, it says, "Please don't show Andre this." And then he's talking about that during the match. Andre is doing exactly what he wrote down on the piece of paper, which is fantastic. But at the same time, it's like, hey, you didn't want Andre to see it. But how did Andre know this entire match? Somebody didn't listen to you and showed Andre the piece of paper anyway. So I think that I think it was a great documentary. I think we all are looking for things to kind of complain about. Is it Hogan heavy? Yeah, there's a lot of Hogan in it. But also at the same time, Hogan was a big part of that era. And also Hogan was the catalyst to that next phase of Andre's life at the time. And what he did for Hogan set up the entire course of where wrestling is today. So you had to talk about Hogan a lot. I kind of say, okay, like let's say if we had a rock documentary, and there was a big part of it about Stone Cold Steve Austin, where Stone Cold is talking about this, that, and the third, and people go, wow, Stone Cold Steve Austin is in that a lot. Well, yeah, he fought him at 3 WrestleManias. They were the main event at 3. They were the 2 biggest icons at the time. Vice versa. If you have a Stone Cold Steve Austin documentary, and there's a lot of The Rock in it. Well, these two were intertwined for so long. So this is what happened with Hogan and Andre the Giant. And so, you have to talk about the rise of Hogan because it's in the context of where the business as a whole was going, and because it led into how Andre felt towards the end of his life. And so that's what they did. Overall, I think it was a great documentary. I really enjoyed it. So I really recommend that you go out of your way to watch it if you can't. It's on HBO. It's only an hour and a half long, so you can do it right before you fall asleep or while you're listening to me.